Hello, Amina. This is Connie Davidson, and I wanted to make this little video to sort of help you with the nuances of lesson planning. First of all, let me tell you that one of the things that you have written particularly well is your content objective. And I also noticed that when I was just grading your work in general, that you were able to provide the condition and then what it is that was going to be measurable that the students were able to do, and that you're really able to connect what they're able to do to what the standard is asking them to do. So now with that's often very difficult for people to understand. I want to just go over this particular document so you'll understand more directly how to fill it out with all the detail, because when you get ready to do your TPA 1 in March, you're going to have to understand these kinds of details. And moving forward, as you just progress as a teacher, you're going to see how these details are going to help inform you of what it is you would do were you to teach a lesson or when you begin to teach lessons. So I want to first go, some of this was in the video, but I want to speak directly to you regarding your work. What you've written up here is fine. There's nothing that I can tell you that would improve upon this particular area. What I do want to let you know is whenever you're dealing with the standards, you are not only going to write what the content standard is, which is Common Core, but you are also going to include, I don't know if I can open this. Yeah, I can. You're also, oops, sorry about that. Let me close this. I didn't want to do this one. I wanted to go here. I don't think I can write in your document. But what you want to also do is import the English language development standards. So I'm going to show you what those look like and how to access them. So as you have already know how to attach the Common Core standards, but you also have to attach the California English Language Development Standards. And to do that, you go back into the edit in order to bring up the Add Standards box. Then you add your go to Add Standards, and you have to come back and also go to this box here, which is California English Language Development. You click here. You will always have listening and speaking in your lesson plan unless you are not going to speak at all for a lesson. But part of English language development is the paradigm that reading and writing, listening and speaking are the tools and behaviors that a person must go through and utilize in order to improve language development. So you will start with listening and speaking. You will go to your grade level. And then within the grade level, it'll ask you, where are they in their language development? So let's say that you were working with an intermediate student. You would then open up intermediate ELD level, and then you will see, well, what is it that the intermediate student is supposed to be able to do it related to the lesson that I am about to teach. So in the lesson that you authored, they were going to read a text. So we know we're going to have reading. They're going to read a text, and after they read a text, they are going to determine the main idea of that text, and they're going to be explicit in writing what that is. So we know that in this particular lesson, there's going to be writing and reading, and you are going to be providing directions, so there will be listening and speaking. So that means we're going to have to go to all four of those standards. So here we have to see, where is this going to apply? Is in this case, you are going to ask them to do something and they're going to respond, which is you're going to say, I need you to do this in respect to the directions, and then you're going to check for understanding, having them tell you what it is they're supposed to do. So you look and see, respond to message by asking simple questions or briefly restating the message. Well, that might be it. They're going to listen attentively to story and information and identify the important details and concepts. Not necessarily so. Let's see if this one will work. Make oneself understood when speaking by using consistent standard English, grammatical forms and sounds. However, some rules may not be followed, such as third person singular male and female pronouns. Participate in a social conversation. They're not going to do that. Identify the main idea and some supporting details of oral presentation, familiar literature, and key concepts of subject matter content. This is more aligned to this lesson. So we're going to click that one and say that's the standard that they're going to use for listening and speaking. We're going to add this to your unit, to your lesson. But we're not finished because the students are also going to be reading. So we have to come back here and add another standard. We're going back here. We're now going to go to reading. We're going to go to your grade level, and we're going to go to what kind of reading. If they're going to read something, find the main idea, and then write it down, it's probably reading comprehension. So we'll go to that, early intermediate, and we'll ask, what is it? Are they comprehension and analysis of a grade level appropriate text? Well, that pretty much aligned with the standard that you offered. So they're going to read text and use detailed sentences to explain orally the main idea in detailed information, literary text and context. Well, we may say we don't want them to do it orally. We decided we want them to write it down. That's close enough. So but we know they're going to read and find the main idea. The expression isn't going to be oral in this case. It's going to be written. So we're going to say that's what they're going to do. And now we're going to add that one. And then we're going to have to go back one more time because we have to add writing. Same grade level. Strategy application English conventions. We are not going to be worried about punctuation in this particular case. We are actually going to be looking at application and strategy. So let's open this one. Intermediate. Organization and focus? I don't know. Organization and focus, research and technology? I'm not really sure. So let's just see what this says. Narrate a sequence of events. Write brief expository composition, a description, contrast. I don't know. Develop a clear purpose in a short essay. Write a response to selected literature that exhibits understanding of the text using detailed sentences and transitions. That one pretty much explains, it identifies what you would like them to do. In this particular case, you're only asking them for one sentence, but this sentence is related to the text to demonstrate understanding, and the sentence has to have the appropriate detail from the site in order to demonstrate mastery. So now we know what it is they're going to be doing in English language development. We must also add that to this lesson. So now your lesson looks like this. I'm sorry, I didn't realize, this is me, I'm sorry. So for your 6th grade class, they are going to cite textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences drawn from the text. And you are going to have also for English language development, the students are going to identify main idea, use supporting detail because that'll be part of the explicit part of what they write. They're going to read the text and be able to extract the main idea, which is part of that explicit analysis. They're going to gather information from that text, and they're going to respond to the text in such a way in a detailed sentence and with the transitions. We don't have to worry about the transition. We're just worried about the sentence. So we go like, okay, that's what they have to do. So then we add this to our lesson plan and we can close this. We are done. Oops, excuse me. Done editing. So now your lesson plan would look like this. So I can't adapt your lesson plan. But this lesson plan is the one you would see that you need to add these components to your lesson in order to actually make this lesson plan complete. So now we're going to come down here. You've said what the objective is, and your objective is they're going to read this information, and then they're going to identify using textual evidence. They're going to write one sentence for each paragraph from the three paragraphs they're going to read. We now want to come down here to the assessment. The assessment must align directly with the objective. So students will fill out a chart where they identify the gist of the paragraph in their own words and find textual citations to support their gist and write this down in the chart. If you will notice, what you've asked them to do here is different from what you were asking them to do here. Here you say they're going to read the three paragraphs and they're going to identify the textual evidence and write one sentence. Here you say they're going to fill out a graphic organizer. They're going to fill out some type of chart, and they are going to be finding the gist of the paragraph. And in their own words, they're going to find the words and find a textual citation. So you have to change either your assessment or your objective. So given three paragraphs, the students are going to read three paragraphs, identify the gist of the paragraph, and then write a sentence for each paragraph that explicitly states or also has citings or something along that line. So you've got to always make sure that the language you're using here is reflected in the language you're using in the description of the assessment. It's really here in this description of the assessment where you get into the context of what it is they're going to do. Given three paragraphs on X, the students will identify the gist, cite a citation, and explicitly write a sentence explaining the meaning of the paragraph. That would say that if they do that with all three, they've demonstrated mastery, and that's the evidence of mastery that you're going to be looking for. Once you've done that, now you get into everything else is filling in the blanks to get you to that lesson. So I'm going to assume the lesson is going to be they're going to do the gist. It means that I have to make sure they understand what is gist, how to identify gist. Then I have to make sure that I show them the kind of thinking that they would need to know in order to be able to identify the gist of a paragraph. Then I would have them identify the gist of paragraphs with my guidance. Then I would give them the actual handout that they're going to use, and we would identify the gist of the paragraph, one of the paragraphs or a paragraph that they are going to have to process. And we would walk through it together so that they're able to understand this is how you fill out this document. This is what we're looking for. You do not want to release the students to do independent work until you know that they know how to complete the independent work. And in this case, if you are giving them a graphic organizer or a chart, you have to go over with them how to fill out the chart. And you will not release them until they know how to do that properly. So the paradigm for this is I do, which is I model what they need to do. We do, which is we work through together what they need to do. And then they do. Once I know they can do the we do, then I will allow them to do the independent practice, which is they do. So now I'm coming down here and I look at considerations. I already know I have an EL student and I know I have an IEP student. You cannot say you do not have any anticipated difficulties with this lesson. If you have a student that has an IEP, then there's going to be something that's going to be an anticipated difficulty with that student. Or if you have a student that has language issues, they're going to be reading a text. You know that there's going to be some kind of anticipated difficulty that someone learning English is going to have accessing this text. In addition, you describe your students here. In a classroom of students, there's always going to be something that you're going to anticipate. If it's nothing more than one child has a behavior issue, and you know you're going to have to keep a close eye on that child to keep him or her focused. So you cannot write, I do not anticipate any difficulties at this time, because there's always going to be something. The text could be too hard. What the text is writing about may not be something they have experienced. And so you are going to have to create scaffolded information so that they can relate to the text. There's children in your classroom that don't know how to write well, so you're going to have to work with them on writing. You have students reading a below grade level or above grade level because they're earlier finishers, and you're going to have to work with them. These are all the kinds of things you have to think of as you have anticipated difficulties. So you can't say you're not going to have any. You do say for these two students, because we're only going to deal with these two, that you're going to provide more wait time and technology. So wait time is appropriate, and you want to explain, I'm giving more wait time because this child has an IEP that says they need additional time to complete stuff. And then you say that the students have the technology in order to go to the Chromebook. But I don't know if this is for the IEP student or for the ELD student. I also don't know if these adaptations that you've made here for the ELD student are appropriate for what the ELD student is able to do. And I can only know that if I once again go back here and look at look at this, which says that this ELD student is going to be able to do certain things, but maybe some of those things are going to be a little restrictive. So let me go back to your lesson plan now. All right, so we're back in the lesson plan. And you say in this particular one, they're going to be looking at critical thinking, and your assessment is going to be formative. Like we've already talked about what the assessment is and how your assessment is not matching your objective at this time. But you do want to be, you have said that the students would be able to identify the gist in a paragraph and to find the textual citations to support their gist and then write them down. That's very measurable. So that is appropriate for an assessment. You're going to be using direct instruction. So this is where your listening and speaking is going to come in. You're going to be talking to these students and working through this issue with them. Students are going to have a handout with 3 paragraphs on the chart, and students will need a pencil to write with. That's fine. Then you have the open. This is where you cannot say things are not applicable. This is an entire lesson, even if it is just giving them the directions before they start the work. And the one thing you have to do here is you have to write this as though you were writing a screenplay. I will say this to the students, and then I will ask this question. What are you reading? Why do you think we're doing this? I'm going to open it up with, I'm going to write down the questions, and then I'll say the students will be asked to do X, Y, Z. Hopefully, a student will say this. If not, then I will provide this information for the students. I will check for understanding by asking these questions. Once I know they understand this, then I'm going to move into this phase of the lesson. So what you have here is the teacher used the I do, we do, you do, but you didn't explain anything about what that looked like. How did she do those things? How would you do those things? If you just say, hey, look at me and now go do this, that's not good teaching, because you cannot release the students to do independent work unless you know they can do the work. So this you have to write like you're writing a play. You need lots of narration here. What you're going to do, what the students are going to do, what you hope they're going to do. If they don't do that, what are you going to do instead? What are you actually going to say to the students? What questions are you actually going to ask the students? And so on. Now, the close of your lesson will relate directly to the lesson itself. This is where your students are going to say things to you that let you know that, number one, they understand the lesson is coming to a close, and number two, they're going to think about what it is they learned when you have them doing this lesson. Such as, you could do a pair share where the students had to share one of their insights that they wrote down with a partner and see if the partners got the same thing, and if not, they discuss why they got something different. Or if you wanted them to be able to talk explicitly about something, they could publish to one another, and then you could have the 2 or 3 students publish to the class, meaning they would share their information with the class. You could have a ticket out the door. But this has to relate to the mastery of the lesson, but on a level that makes the students go back and think about their thinking and thinking about what they learned. The written response is if when you, or if you've seen the lesson worked through, you reflect on what is it you saw? What did you see yourself do when you teach a lesson? When did were the students always engaged? Where in the lesson did they become disengaged? What was I doing during that disengagement? Had I stayed in one place too long? Should I have moved a little faster? Did I move too fast and they didn't get it? Perhaps I should have done X over Y. Or when I did this, it was just perfect and everybody got it. Or I assumed they didn't understand and they did, and the lesson ended too soon. Or I needed more time, whatever that happens to be. But that's what this is about here. So I want you to know that you have, at least I know that you understand how to write an assessment and how to write an objective. And that's huge. That is gigantic. But you have to make sure that your assessment, your objective, and your standard are all in alignment. And you always do that first. Once you've done that, everything else is just describing how you are going to meet your objective and measure for mastery. If you still have questions, let me know. I would appreciate it if you would at least look at this lesson plan again and make an attempt at revising it and just letting me know when you've done that, because I still have access to it in the observation event. Thank you very much, Amina. Have a good evening.